I'm Richard Vaughan. I'm a journalist for the Times Educational Supplement. We are here to talk about building schools for the future, £55 billion renewal programme. The programme is now facing possible cuts, so we're here to talk about what future does building schools for the future have. So, Paul, let us know who you are and let's crack on.
My name's Paul Clark. I'm Chief Executive of an organisation called Creativity, Culture and Education, whose banner is at the back there. We deliver some major programmes, one of which is Creative Partnerships, which you will find happening in many schools where you come from. 4 schools, in fact, in Graham's constituency, let's say, all of whom are very enthusiastic. We also are piloting the government's pledge to try and offer 5 hours of high-quality cultural engagement a week to young people.
If you'd like to just crack on and give your thoughts, what the future holds for the future.
I think a few simple points to begin with. I was struck by Michael Gove's speech about the emphasis on the ties and blazers, and to encourage young people to put value on their education by dressing up for it. And I think if one is going to pursue that line, I think it is our responsibility as adults to do the same for the school buildings. If we take education seriously, then we should provide fit-for-purpose buildings in which to do it. And the sad truth is that there are loads of poor, crumbling buildings around the country being used to provide education for young people. And it's not that we don't get by with them. I think it's that what we signal to young people about the value we place on it is very poor. And therefore, for whatever criticisms that one might have about how the programme itself has been implemented and developed, I'd be very keen that we didn't allow the criticisms of the implementation to undermine the fact that we should have great fit-for-purpose buildings for young people to go to, and that if we don't do that, we can't expect them to take it as seriously as Michael Gove is suggesting should happen. I think the second thing, and this is where it gets onto the implementation, as with many government initiatives, many government initiatives will be at the sharp end of this. They like the gap between the announcement and the complete implementation and all the results to be as short as possible, preferably less than a week. And this is quite hard to achieve when you're rebuilding buildings. And the pressure to make this work in time terms, I think, has undermined the capacity of those involved to think about what the core opportunity here was, which is what does education for the future look like? And therefore, what kind of building was it? And I think in a lot of cases, in the early generation, what one got to see was pretty old-fashioned buildings designed to deliver the old kind of education. And I think that opportunities were lost. And I think if we are going to continue with it, then the buildings themselves and the design of them should reflect our ambitions for the education of young people. And in all ways, and also should reflect this is education for the 21st century. I don't think we've allowed enough time. I don't think we've allowed as much opportunity for discussion with different parts. And thirdly, which I can see coming into the programme now, for many places in this country, and coming from the arts sector, this is really important. The schools are the main cultural community facility that is there. You know, those of us who live in London think, oh, that's great because everybody's got theatres, museums and so on and so forth. Most people do not. The schools are the opportunity to provide that. And if you get into places like Cornwall or Northumberland or Forest of Dean and so on and so forth, the school is what there is. And if we're going to build new ones, then let's make sure that they provide the ability, take that opportunity for the kind of cultural facilities that those communities really need. It's not a huge additional cost, it's just thinking it through when you're building it in the first place to make sure that the ability to exhibit exhibitions, to give concerts, to perform plays, whatever it is built into that school.
Very good, excellent. Anna, I guess we could ask you to go next. Anna Fazakli, Head of Education, Arts and Culture at Policy Exchange.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. I'd also like to say a very quick thank you to CCE and to Paul for sponsoring this event. It happened. BSF, we have published a report on BSF. There are copies outside if you fancy having a look on the train home. I'll just outline a couple of our main conclusions. We talked to around just under 60 senior people involved in the BSF programme right across the board. First of all, I will just say that there was clearly a very big need for building schools for the future. It was a good idea. In 2002, the Audit Commission published a report in which they identified a maintenance time bomb ticking away. Loos weren't working, roofs were broken, heating wasn't coming on in the winter. It was all looking like a big bloody disaster, and so it did need addressing. So the government was quite right to address it. The problem came in, of course, from the fact that sorting out loos, heating, roofs wasn't actually all that sexy, and so they decided to append a grand narrative to that vision, and lo, the phrase educational transformation was born. Now, I'm not actually sneering about the notion of educational transformation, but one thing that was just absolutely unavoidable from our interviews was that nobody has a clue what it means. And that's a very big problem. Nobody could define for us what educational transformation meant. As a result, all sorts of advisors are being parachuted into the system to try and sort it out. Local authorities are trying to come up with a vision that fits a vision of the government's that the government itself doesn't seem to quite understand. It was variously called that transformation swear word. People said, just please, just don't even mention the phrase, it makes me feel unwell. One very senior member of a very, very large building firm who'd been involved in BSF for 5 years in a very major way, said to us, we still have no organisational understanding of what educational transformation is and how we deliver it through BSF. So the main point that I would like to begin with and leave you with is that if there is all of that opacity, then educational transformation will not be delivered. I would add, though, that there was never any real evidence that it could be delivered. It's definitely true that bad buildings have an impact on pupils. There's clear evidence that that is so. But there is not clear evidence that good buildings drive up attainment. So moving on from educational transformation, I'll just touch very briefly on ICT. As I'm sure most of you will know, a massive 10% of a very massive budget was ring-fenced for ICT. Again, it was another really big bet. There isn't any clear evidence. This might be something the audience would like to debate a little bit, but we don't know for sure whether technology is going to drive attainment in the way that the government is clearly hoping. Perhaps it will. I think that one of the things that is dead certain is that it won't drive attainment if teachers don't understand how to use it. And I think that that's a clear problem, that there isn't sufficient training attached to this. There isn't enough of a vision about how all of this exciting new technology is going to work. We would also like there to be a bit more consideration for creativity, the creativity agenda alongside technology. We just don't really think that there should be a sort of one-size-fits-all vision for everybody. I've also got issues with the notion of a managed service, that schools who have actually got quite exciting plans for technology, not all of them have, but some of them are really trying to sort of forge a path, and it's really key to their philosophy. They've tried to opt out of the PFS managed service, and they've found that although it's supposed to be possible, in reality it's impossible. Some of them are considering taking that to court at the moment, and I think that that's a big issue. I certainly think that if you're a multi-academy provider, you ought to be able to operate your own managed service. So I think there's a big problem with the vision behind BSF. It needs to go back to being just an estates fund. It needs to be a buildings fund that does what it says on the tin, scrap the political hyperbole. There's enough reason for this. We don't need to dress it up with all sorts of fancy words